So Dana, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name's Dana Robinson, and I'm a trademark attorney. I founded a law firm about 5 years ago, and we have 14 attorneys now. We focus on intellectual property law for the most part, and we do a lot of work with small corporations.
And you love that small business, you love that entrepreneurial environment. Why so?
I love the entrepreneurial client because I'm an entrepreneur. Before law school, I started 2 different businesses, sold them both. After law school and since, I've been involved with over a dozen different businesses. All of my clients are startups. 80% are 1 or 2 people. My focus is on the startup, the newbie, the people who come to me and say, Dana, I have an idea. What do I do next?
Right. So give me some examples. What types of clients? What types of businesses, I should say?
I have clients across a wide variety of different industries. Shoe companies, a bathing suit manufacturer, web app developers, software companies, traditional retail stores, bars, restaurants, casino.
Pretty diverse.
It's absolutely diverse, and I love it.
Cool, cool. And you also have a little bit of time in that busy life of yours to teach, I understand?
I do. I'm an adjunct professor at the University of San Diego School of Law, where I teach intellectual property law, and I manage the IP law clinic.
Wow, busy guy.
I am.
And you still have a passion for the small business, for the guy that wants to start his dream and build an empire.
I do, and partly because that was my experience. I empathize. I have been an entrepreneur in my client's seat many times, and still am in some businesses.
Sure.
And I find that the entrepreneur needs information in order to succeed. They don't just need a lawyer who's going to come in and charge them. And I don't think they need to pay a lawyer to become educated. I think they need to become educated through resources like this course that we're working on right now, so that they have the training to know, how do I use a lawyer? Can I file my own trademark and save money? My first business, for example, I started with $2,000, my entire budget. There's no way I could have spent $1,000 with a lawyer to file a trademark, for example. That would have been an unwise use of my funds.
Sure.
So my goal is to provide resources to entrepreneurs and empower them, essentially, to do what they can on their own, and also become familiar with the sorts of things lawyers do, so that they can use them more wisely.
So if I understand your message, you're saying that I need to, as an entrepreneur, understand the basics of trademark and copyright and intellectual property law, so that I can leverage my time with that attorney and get the most for my money and keep myself out of trouble and protect my idea.
Absolutely. I think it's incumbent on a new entrepreneur to understand intellectual property in particular. Most businesses in America now are heavily reliant on intellectual property, or entirely based on an idea, intellectual property. So understanding the core concepts of intellectual property are essential for almost every entrepreneur in America.
All right, so let's focus in. So the purpose of this communication we're working on right now is trademark law. Let's take a look at the big picture. What is a trademark, and why is it important?
So a trademark is anything that identifies the source of a good or a service. We're all familiar with many trademarks: Coke, Pepsi, Levi's, Kodak, Panasonic, Calvin Klein. These are all trademarks that we're familiar with. What they do, they function to tell us, where did that good come from? Where is the service coming from? So a trademark, or a brand as we often refer to them, is an indication of source.
So the trademark could be the name of my business, or it could be a product.
You can trademark the name of a product or the name of your business. You can even trademark the shape of your product in some cases, as we're all familiar with the shape of a Coke bottle.
Sure.
That shape is a trademark for Coke. You know it's from Coke when you see the shape of the bottle.
All right, so step number 1 is come up with a name of your business and protect it so nobody can steal it, and keep yourself out of trouble so you're not inadvertently stealing from somebody else, correct?
It's more complicated than that. The first thing most entrepreneurs do when they come to me is they sit down and say, I have a brand I've picked. I love it. How can I protect it? But the reality is that they have to step back from that and ask the question, can I adopt this trademark and use it without infringing somebody else's rights? Once you've done that, then you're in a position to say, how can I protect the name? So the first step is really to be sure that adopting the name is not going to infringe somebody else's rights first.
So let's take a look at that. What is the first step? Where do I begin? Of course, I should be calling you first thing, but if I'm not doing that, how do I do this on my own? Where do I start?
Right, and my goal is to ensure that you don't have to make calling a lawyer your first step.
Okay.
The first step for the entrepreneur is to understand enough about trademark law so that they can do some due diligence on their own and determine whether they can use this trademark or not. It's exciting when you start a new business. The first thing people want to do is pick a name. And often these days, what people do when they pick a name is actually focus on the domain name.
Right. Domain name is available. I should start that business.
Exactly.
Right.
And so the assumption is that if a domain name is available, that the trademark rights are available as well.
And not true.
Not necessarily
May
true.
not be.
So the way trademark rights arise is pretty important to understand. Trademark rights don't come from registration. They don't even come from using or registering a domain name. Trademark rights arise from use in commerce. So the moment somebody opens a restaurant or a bar and puts a name on it, they start to create trademark rights with no registration at all.
Right.
Now those trademark rights only exist to the extent of the use. So a small hometown barbershop whose market is in one city is only going to create trademark rights within that city. But they do create those rights, these invisible rights, simply by using the trademark, opening the barbershop, opening the restaurant. Now, if you come along and you say, I would like to open a nationwide chain of restaurants, you have to consider, does anyone else have rights that predates my new venture?
And that's where it gets complicated.
That's where it gets complicated. So you need to actually try to find people who have adopted a similar trademark, even if they haven't registered it. Now, obviously, it helps you isolate other uses. If they have a domain name, you'll find them easily. If they have a federal trademark registration, you'll find them more easily. But very often, that's not the case. So I, as a lawyer, have to order a search from an outside service. So large companies that pay a lot of money for due diligence pay us as trademark lawyers to do this clearance for them. But for most small businesses, it's not worth the $4,000 or $5,000 that it would cost to pay me to do the due diligence. Instead, the number one place that a new entrepreneur should go to is Google.
Really?
They should do a search.
Just Google it.
Start by Googling it and go as many pages deep until there's a level of confidence that you're not going to find the name that you're choosing being used by somebody else in the US. In addition, there's a federal trademark registration system. Most people have heard of the Trademark Office, the USPTO, the US Patent and Trademark Office. There is a database that can be searched.
And is that free?
It's free. Obviously, if someone has registered the trademark you would like to adopt, that's going to be a problem for you. So checking that's important, but that's not exhaustive because many people come to my office and they say, I already checked the trademark office. There's no problem. But they didn't do the Google search. And it turns out when we open the computer and look for that, we find a business with the same name in another city that has now prior trademark rights, even though they don't have a trademark registration.
So if they have not registered it, I could still decide to be aggressive and go forward and go after that in spite of somebody else's use. Is that true?
When you sign a trademark application, you are attesting to the oath that, to your knowledge, there is no prior user of the same trademark for the same goods or services. So if it is in fact that someone has an unregistered use of the same name for the same services, then you're not entitled to file the trademark application. You would be making a misrepresentation under oath to the federal government. It would be fraud, absolutely. Instead, you could choose a slightly different name that you believe is different enough to sign that oath. Or you might find that somebody has a different service. For example, someone might have a bar with the same name that has not registered it, and you might be opening a coffee house.
So if it's in a different category, it may be open.
Maybe, yeah. The standard the law applies is called the likelihood of confusion test. It's a fairly complicated test, and it's one that we'll walk through as part of this course. The likelihood of confusion test requires that we try to determine whether a consumer is likely to be confused between the earlier user of a trademark and the latter user. And if there is a likelihood of confusion, we call that infringement.
Infringement,
Infringement.
a scary word, it
A
sounds
scary
like.
word. It is a cause of action that you can be brought to court on.
Sure. So the entrepreneur does need to take this stuff seriously. Setting this up properly can make a big difference between getting in trouble, staying out of trouble.
Absolutely, and I can't tell you the number of times that I've had an entrepreneur show up with a trademark fight right out of the gate, right before the launch of their big app in the iTunes App Store, right before they launch their new website. They get a letter from somebody saying, excuse me, I have prior use of that trademark, please stop.
That'll take the wind out of the entrepreneurial sails.
Absolutely.